They said he had everything, a $2.8 billion empire built from nothing, private jets, mansions, respect from Wall Street. But the night I met him, sitting alone in that corner booth, I saw what the world missed. The empty man behind the empire, the void even billions couldn't fill. Stick with me for the next 30 minutes. This isn't just another rags to riches story. This is about the woman who saw past the wealth, the real empire he built, and how she almost walked away from it all. I still remember that Tuesday night. The rain was coming down hard, turning the streets of Manhattan into a blur of headlights and umbrellas. I was 20 minutes late for my shift at Le Bernardin, my art portfolio soaked through, and my shoes squelching with every step. Being a server at a place like that was never part of my plan, but when your paintings aren't paying the rent and your mother needs help with medical bills, you take what you can get. The dining room was half empty because of the weather. Most of the regulars had cancelled, leaving us with just a handful of tables. That's when I noticed him in the corner booth, the one they always reserve for VIPs. He was staring at his phone, but not really looking at it, you know? The way someone does when they're trying to appear busy, but their mind is somewhere else entirely. I knew who he was immediately. Michael Chen, the tech billionaire who'd been all over Forbes and Bloomberg, the man who'd built DataVault from his Stanford dorm room and turned it into the fastest-growing AI company in Silicon Valley. Even in the dim restaurant lighting, he looked exactly like his pictures, polished and perfect in his tailored suit. But something was off. When I approached his table, he barely looked up. Just ordered the tasting menu without even glancing at me. I've served plenty of wealthy people. They usually fall into two categories: the ones who treat you like furniture and the ones who try too hard to be friendly. He was neither. He was just there. Present, but not really present. I was pouring his wine when he suddenly asked, "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" It caught me so off guard that I nearly dropped the bottle. Here was this man worth billions, asking me, a struggling artist barely making ends meet, about feeling disconnected from his own existence. That question broke something in me. Maybe it was the long day, or maybe it was seeing my own hidden loneliness reflected in someone who supposedly had everything. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw what everyone else missed. Behind the success, the wealth, the designer suit, there was someone drowning in plain sight. Little did I know that this chance encounter would change everything I thought I knew about love, success, and what it really means to build an empire worth keeping. The week after our meeting, I couldn't shake him from my mind, not because of the millions, but because I'd seen behind his carefully constructed wall. He came back to the restaurant twice, always alone, always in that same corner booth. By the third visit, I'd learned pieces of his story that never made it into the Forbes articles. "My mother sold fabric at the market," he told me one night as I served his appetizers. 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. I used to help her count change after school, counting pennies until my fingers went numb. His eyes caught mine, and I saw the boy he'd been. She saved every dollar for my education, never let me quit when things got hard. He told me about sleeping on friends' couches while coding DataVault's first algorithm, surviving on ramen and coffee, how he'd cried in the bathroom after his first investor meeting, thinking he'd never make it, the nights when his mother's medical bills felt like a mountain he'd never climb. But it was what he didn't say that spoke volumes, the relationships sacrificed for business meetings, the childhood friends who stopped calling when the money started flowing, his brother who'd distanced himself, saying Michael had changed, the women who stayed just long enough to make headlines before disappearing. "Success is supposed to feel good," he said during our fourth conversation. "That's what they don't tell you. It just feels hollow, like wearing a suit that doesn't fit, but everyone keeps telling you it looks perfect." I understood more than he knew. Every night after my shift, I went home to my tiny studio apartment, surrounded by half-finished paintings I couldn't afford to frame. My own dreams deferred by reality's demands. We were from different worlds, yet somehow standing on the same island of isolation. The moment that changed everything happened during a late service. He'd stayed past closing, the staff giving him a wide berth as I cleaned nearby tables. "You're the only person who looks at me, not at what I own," he said quietly. "Do you know how rare that is?" What he didn't realize was that I saw more than he wanted to show. The way his shoulders relaxed when he talked about his mother. How his hands moved when describing his first coding breakthrough. The light that flickered in his eyes when discussing technology's potential to help people, not just make profits. He'd built an empire that changed the world, but in doing so, he'd lost something essential. The ability to be seen for who he truly was, not what he'd achieved. Our connection grew in the spaces between our different worlds. I started sketching him during quiet moments at the restaurant, capturing the man behind the business headlines. He purchased my first painting, not because he loved my work, though he pretended to, but because he saw how desperately I needed the sale. "I'm not a charity case," I told him sharply when he tried to pay 3 times my asking price. The hurt in his eyes surprised me. I was so used to fighting the world alone, I'd forgotten what it felt like when someone simply wanted to help. The media found out about us after 2 months. Suddenly, my Instagram was flooded with messages calling me a gold digger. Strangers dissected my appearance, my background, my worthiness to be seen with Michael Chen. The first time I saw TMZ speculating about our unlikely romance, I nearly disappeared. But something was happening to him too. He started meeting me before work, not for business power breakfasts, but for coffee at the corner cafe. He wanted to watch me paint in his penthouse, insisted I convert his guest room into a studio. "Money should create beauty, not just more money," he said, transforming my makeshift art corner into a proper creative space. His board members grew concerned when he started spending less time at the office. His investors questioned decisions when he chose people over pure profit. His family worried he was being manipulated by that woman. The pressure mounted from every direction. One afternoon, sitting in Central Park, he confessed his fear. "I spent my whole life building to get to a certain place, and now I'm finding that place means nothing without someone to share it with." His vulnerability struck me harder than any grand gesture could have. I shared my own fears, that I'd lose myself in his world, that I'd become just another accessory to his success. "I don't want to be Michelle Chen's girlfriend," I told him. "I want to be me, with or without you." He understood. He'd become someone's something too many times to count. The turning point came during a business crisis. His biggest competitor launched a product that threatened DataVault's market share. His team worked around the clock, but late one night, he showed up at my studio instead of his office. "I know what matters now," he said simply. "I won't lose us while fighting to save something that means less." In that moment, I saw what nobody else did. He hadn't just chosen love over business. He'd chosen authenticity over performance, connection over conquest. The summer when everything almost fell apart started beautifully. Michael took me to meet his family in California. His mother immediately pulled me into her kitchen, teaching me how to make her famous dumplings while sharing stories about young Michael's determination. She hugged me tightly when he wasn't looking and whispered, "You make him smile the way he used to before all this success." But Silicon Valley wasn't as welcoming. At his annual investor dinner, I overheard board members discussing my influence on Michael's decisions. They worried he was becoming soft, making choices based on ethics rather than pure profit margins. When we walked into a room, conversations often stopped. The breaking point came in August. Bloomberg published an article titled, "DataVault's Doubts, Can Love Transform Tech's Golden Boy?" It didn't directly attack me, but the implications were clear. Michael's stock options dropped 2% overnight. His assistant fielded dozens of calls from worried investors. That night, sitting in his apartment overlooking the city, Michael was quiet for hours. Finally, he spoke. "My father spent his life being invisible so I could be seen." Now I'm visible, but feel more invisible than ever. He picked up a framed photo from his desk, his parents at their naturalization ceremony. They sacrificed everything for this American dream. What happens if I choose differently? His phone buzzed constantly with messages from his board demanding a conference call. The pressure intensified when a major venture capital firm threatened to pull funding unless he refocused on business priorities. The unspoken message was clear: distance yourself from her, or risk everything. I couldn't stay. That night, I packed my bags with shaking hands. Michael found me in his guest room, tears streaming down my face. I can't be the reason you lose everything you built, I told him. Your mother's sacrifices, your dreams, all of it. He sat beside me, quiet for a long time. You know what I realized today? I built Data Vault to prove something to everyone. But with you, I don't have to prove anything. I just get to be. His words cracked something inside me. Choose the Empire, I whispered. I'll always understand. He shook his head. I spent my whole life thinking the Empire was everything. Now I know the Empire was just preparation. For this. For us. For building something real. But words couldn't quiet the voices in my head. Or his. The next morning, I left for my sister's place in Chicago, calling it a cooling-off period, but knowing it might be the end. The month apart was torture. Chicago felt like a different planet, and my sister's extra bedroom became my processing space. Every morning, I'd paint furiously, trying to capture the emptiness I felt. Michael texted constantly at first, then the messages slowed. I followed Data Vault stock through news alerts, watching it fluctuate with reports of his renewed focus. What the business world didn't see was the transformation happening behind closed doors. Michael used our separation to redefine success. He restructured Data Vault with a new mission: technology that serves humanity, not just shareholders. He hired social impact advisors, launched initiatives for underserved communities, and redirected profits toward education programs. 3 weeks after I left, a package arrived. Inside was my painting of him from that first night at the restaurant, the one capturing his isolation. On the back, he'd written, "This is who I was before you saw me. Now I can't unsee the truth you showed me." The real revelation came when his mother called me directly. "He's different now," she said in her gentle, accented English. "Not the desperate boy trying to make us proud. He's the man I always hoped he'd become." She paused. "He told the board that his heart isn't negotiable, that a company led by fear will never change the world." Through friends at the restaurant, I learned he'd sponsored art programs at 3 low-income schools, starting with a local initiative in my Brooklyn neighborhood. He hadn't told me, wasn't trying to win me back with grand gestures. He was building the kind of empire he'd only discovered through knowing me. When I finally returned to New York, we met at that same corner booth where it all began. He looked different, calmer, more centered. "I chose wrong before," he said. "I thought I had to choose between the Empire and my heart. Now I understand they're meant to work together." He pulled out his phone, showing me Data Vault's new impact reports. Employee satisfaction up 40%, diversity initiatives transforming the workforce, profit margins lower, but purpose infinitely higher. "Your way of seeing changed everything," he said, "not just for me, but for everyone we touch." We didn't rush back into anything. Instead, we rebuilt slowly, intentionally. His business decisions now balanced profit with purpose. My art evolved into community projects that his company funded. We became partners in the truest sense, equals creating something greater than what either could achieve alone. The empire he'd built in isolation was impressive, but the one we built together was transformative. If you believe that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, hit like. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that hearts are more powerful than bank accounts. Subscribe for more untold stories that change everything you think you know about success.